Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. We've got to get that catchphrase in on the channel when the opportunity arises, and it's quite often because Gothenburg is a hell of a good beer city these days. But for this review we are going to return to a brewery who have featured on the channel a good number of times before, but it's quite rare that I get to do a dedicated review to that brewery. These guys do more collaborations rather than anything else. So this is probably the 12th or so review that features this brewery, but it's only the 3rd or 4th one that I've done where it is only their beer. So yeah, curious to see how it turns out. For this review then, we are going to return to In Brewing. And we're having a taste of the Hustle today. So this one comes in at 9.8% ABV. They're describing it as a hazelnut Imperial Stout, and fingers crossed this is another nice beer. This one was released as part of the Lokal Småska League assortment for September of 2020. I believe the exact release date was the 1st of September this month, but it was released along with an IPA and a Pale Ale actually. I think it was the IPA was called the GBG Haze, and I think the other one was just called the GBG Pale Ale or something like that. But yeah, this brewery have a very, very good reputation. They are the organisers of the All In Festival actually, which is a very highly regarded beer festival here in Sweden, and I've had some really nice beers that have involved this brewery over the years. The last review that I did from these guys was the collaboration, the Mango Bird, that they did with Duck Pond Brewing. Prior to that I did the All Bout It back in January, which was it was their beer. They were the lead brewery from what I understand, but that was a collaboration with Popels and J. Wakefield from over in Florida. That was a big beast of an Imperial Stout, like 14% ABV. But the last dedicated review, if I remember rightly, was called a Gothenburg Phenomenon, and that was a hazy, it was either an IPA or a Pale Ale if I remember rightly, but that was quite an interesting beer, and that was maybe about a year ago or something that I published that one. But yeah, like I said, about the 12th review that's featured this brewery on the channel, but this is only the 3rd or 4th one that is where they've been the lead brewery actually, maybe the 4th when I think about it. But yeah, very, very curious to see how this one turns out, and hopefully it's another good beer. I have heard good things about this one, a hazelnut Imperial Stout at 9.8% ABV. So let's see how we get on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from All In Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about All In Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. Here we go. So All In Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are a gypsy brewery based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, and they were started in 2012 under the guidance of Pelle Frost. So at some point they do plan to have their own brewery, but at the moment they are operating as a gypsy brewery and just using the spare capacity at lots of other breweries, mainly in the Gothenburg area, but I think they brew a few things in other places as well. But in their early years they travelled around Europe making lots of different collaboration beers with breweries across the whole continent from what I understand, but more recently they've been making most of their beers in Sweden. So they started brewing with Brewski in Helsingborg, down here in Skåne in the south of the country, and one of their brewers, Lucas Munryd, he actually worked full time at Brewski brewing both the All In and the Brewski beers, but he left that job. He left that after Brewski kind of expanded and didn't really have time to have, didn't have space rather, to have a gypsy brewery in there along with them. And yeah, that Brewski of course have you know, expanded considerably since that time. I think that was maybe about 2016 or so that All In Brewing kind of left their operations at Brewski actually. But later they also brewed for a while at West Coast Brewery, and that was where all of the beers were kind of coming out of, but recently they have been brewing things at various different places around the city from what I understand. At one point they also had 3 brewers. This was Lucas, Victor and Andreas, and they'd always been into the kind of hoppy American style IPAs, but they did like the Imperial Stouts as well. So Victor and Andreas were the original guys, while Lucas was headhunted from another brewery and he was brought in as the head brewer. They worked as a team to create the beers, but Lucas of course has moved on and he is now the main man at Stigbergets Brewery these days. But in 2015 these guys were voted one of the top 100 breweries in the world by Rate Beer, which is a pretty good feat actually, we have to say that, especially for a Swedish brewery, because Rate Beer is very American dominated. But they continue to expand a little bit over the years and just get more beers out there. But in 2019 they were aiming to scale up their brewing to around 100,000 litres of beer per year, while Pellet is making efforts to get the beers exported over to Europe. And as I said, Lucas Monraid has now moved on to Stigbergets, and from what I understand it is Victor and Andreas who are the main guys behind the brewing side of the thing, but Pelle of course does take an active role in that as well. But every year these guys also host their own beer festival in Gothenburg, which is called All In Beer Fest. I need to get up to that one year, it'd be quite cool to attend that because I've heard it is very, very good. And some of the All In guys are also co-owners along with the guys from Dugas Brewery of the Brewers Beer Bars, which are really nice. I do recommend you go and check out the one on Tredje Långgatan. I haven't been to the other one, but Tredje Långgatan is the original one, and that's really widely regarded as a very, very nice craft beer bar in Gothenburg. But like I've said to you before, there's a lot of craft beer activity up there. You know, you've got Stigbergets, you've got OO, you've got Spike, Bierbibliotek, you know, the Vega. You've got so many good breweries operating in and around the Gothenburg area. It really is the Swedish craft beer capital, that city, and All In have been an integral part of that since the early days, even though they are operating mainly as a gypsy brewery. But yeah, do go and check out the Brewers Beer Bar. You will find a number of All In beers there that you won't find anywhere else, along with some really good Dugas stuff and Electric Nurse. So yeah, those are definitely worth checking out. If you're interested in that, you can check out my out and about video I did of the Brewers Beer Bar on Tredje Långgatan. But yeah, as of October 2020, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different beers. I believe the exact number listed on Untappd was 62. So yeah, they have, you know, for a gypsy brewery, that is a fairly decent number, and yeah, they will continue to increase that, of course, in the coming years. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about All In Brewing for the moment. There wasn't really many articles on these guys through beernews.se or anything like that. I think they are just kind of quietly getting on with it, brewing lots of different beers at different places around around Gothenburg. So yeah, hopefully, as I say, I can get up to the All In Beer Fest at some point, maybe next year, once the whole COVID-19 situation has buggered off well and truly. But yeah, as I say, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a taste of this beer then. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is kind of similar to some of the other ones that we've had from All In Brewing before. Their IPAs and stuff tend to come out in cans these days, but the stronger beers tend to still be in the bottles actually. This beer incidentally was brewed at Bierbibliotek, who are one of my favourite Swedish breweries, I have to say. They actually have 2 breweries, so I wonder if this was brewed at the old brewery rather than the new brewery, because the new brewery, of course, release all their beers in cans, and I think it's the bottle at the old one, because that's the sour beer brewery these days. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one. Again, the artwork there, you can see the hazelnut just standing in for the guy's face. Plain white bottle cap on this one, and you can see on the side here, this is the All In Brewing symbol there. It's the kind of hop flower thing that is the main symbol for these guys. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one, brewed at Bierbibliotek by All In Brewing. So yeah, 9.8% hazelnut Imperial Stout, this one. Without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. The other thing I have to say about this is that this wasn't madly expensive actually. This beer I think was only around 40-ish Swedish kroners actually. I've paid more for IPAs than I have for this one that have been lower in alcohol. It's just kind of crazy. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting, and I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. I've had good experiences with All In Brewing before when it comes to the big Imperial Stouts, But yeah, fingers crossed, this is another interesting beer. So yeah, quite bubbly actually on the edge there. But yeah, let's set that back down and we'll have a closer look at this. So as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one has poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. There's a solid half finger of a frothy, I would say quite dark tan head on this one, to be honest. That is quite a dark tan head. That's going to fade away to be a very thin foamy layer quite quickly, I think, or it's just going to leave a big kind of ring around the edge of the glass there. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass. There's a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, and the head is really starting to just fade away and be a very, very thin foamy layer at the moment. If we put the light through this beer, it is pretty much black as night. Around the very edges you can get a little bit of a kind of Pepsi, Coca-Cola type colour to it with the light coming through it, but yeah, definitely a very dark ebony rosewood coloured beer, this one in my mind. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is, but yeah, let's have a look at the aroma and see how we get on that side of things. So yeah. Ooh, that smells really nice actually. Yeah. Lovely, lovely aroma from All In once again. So yeah, first impression of this beer, it's really very nice actually. So this one, first off, it strikes me as a kind of quite a bready Imperial Stout. I really get a lot of kind of brown bread forming the backbone of this beer. On top of that as well, you get some really highly caramelised sugars, like a big treacly molasses kind of thing coming out of this one. And the main thing with big Imperial Stouts like this is that it's usually quite a long boil, you know, probably about 4 or 5 hour boil or something that's going into this, and the longer you boil the beer, of course, the darker the colour gets because the sugars are caramelising a lot more. So yeah, that's something that you will really get, and you can smell those big oily kind of treacly molasses like brown sugars in this one just sitting on top of the bread, and that's really nice. There is a bit of a chocolatey quality to this one as well, and I would say it's maybe around the 60% cocoa chocolate that you're getting out of this one. Kind of somewhere between being a slightly darker chocolate and a more kind of milky chocolate. But yeah, definitely some chocolatey notes in this one, mixing in with the brown sugars there. They're sitting on top of the bread, as I said. There's one or two little woody elements to the malt base as well. You can definitely pick out that little subtlety. But the elephant in the room, of course, is the hazelnut quality. And I mean, the hazelnuts kind of sit right in the middle of the nose there, and they give quite a bit of sweetness to the beer actually. So yeah, I would wonder with this one, because the hazelnuts are very, very bright, I do wonder if there's a mix of hazelnuts in this and a little bit of hazelnut flavour essence. I'd be quite curious to know about that. But going by the ingredients there, it does list hazelnut, it says hazelnut as this main thing, and I think, you know, All In Brewing I don't think are ones that would add the flavour essence into this. So I think it probably is all walnuts, but the aroma that you get from these is very, very strong actually. That's what makes me wonder. The strength of the hazelnut aroma in this is pretty damn impressive actually, because normally they would be a lot more of a subtlety than they are, but when they say it's a hazelnut Imperial Stout, you know, you would expect them to take the focus a little bit, or be the focal point of the beer. But yeah, the malt base of this one I think is really impressive, at least from the aroma perspective. So yeah, the more that you smell of this one, the more it actually gets a little bit drier. You get a few little black malty qualities coming out of this one. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Carafa malt that's in this, the Weiermann Carafa malt from Bamberg in Germany. It's got a little bit of that bread crusty quality that really comes out the further that you go into the aftertaste. Yeah. That'll be the fire engines or the ambulance going away along somewhere. Yeah, someone commented on my video that they hear a lot of sirens actually. And they asked if I lived in a bad area, but no, I don't. It's just one of the main kind of trunk roads, if you like, is just a street away actually, from where I stay. So you know, the ambulances and stuff tear along there to go out to Dolby and things like that. So yeah, one of the big trunk roads here in Lund is just quite close by. So yeah, it's not a bad area, so don't worry. But yeah, the aroma, the malt base in this one is very, very nice. But a really quite bready leaning Imperial Stout, this one, I have to say. I'm a bit surprised about that, but it does have that big kind of nutty character that you'd expect when they're saying that it's a hazelnut Imperial Stout. On the hoppy side of things then, definitely a little bit of a smooth earthiness to this one. You do get a wee touch of floral character and some grassiness as well, but I'd say on the green side of the hops, yeah, quite grassy and quite earthy. The floral notes are a little bit of a subtlety, but you know, with a big stout like this, it's not going to be too bitter on the hoppy side of things, I would say. Some of them can be, but I think the hops in this one do lean a little bit more to the grassy and earthy side of the spectrum, which is what we want. So yeah, I do like how that goes together with this beer. So yeah, on the malty. The malty side of things is lovely on this, I have to say, but yeah, on the fruity side of things, I should have said. For me, the fruits are quite subtle. I mean, you get a little bit of a sharper kind of blackcurranty blackberry note out of this one. I do wonder if it will be like Eureka or, you know, Williamette or, you know, Bramling's Cross or something like that they've used in this. Probably most likely, to be honest with you, that will be what they've used. But yeah, for me, quite a sharp but juicy blackcurranty, blackberry-ish type note out of the beer. There's a little touch of a figgy note to it as well, like a kind of juicy figgy note, maybe even a little bit of juicy plum, to be honest with you. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is pretty damn nice actually. The fruits, the more that you smell and focus on the fruits, the more kind of oily and juicy they become actually. So just focus on that point of the aroma for a little bit. But we're going to have a taste of this beer now. Check out the aroma though before you have a taste of it, because it is really quite nice and quite, how do we say, quite deep and complex actually. So definitely worth pondering that over a little bit. But we're going to taste this beer now. So this one is the Hustle, a 9.8% hazelnut Imperial Stout from In Brewing, based in Gothenburg, one of the numerous gypsy breweries you're going to find operating around the city. But let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål. Yeah, again, that's pretty damn solid from In Brewing. Beer's a good bit more roasty than you might have thought from the aroma as well, actually. But yeah, I like that about it. It does have just that little bit of toasting, that little bit of roasty black maltiness in it that really just lets you know, yeah, this is an Imperial Stout. Just remember what it should be. So yeah, what I would say about this beer, this one comes across quite differently in the flavour than it does in the aroma actually. Yeah, this one, it is a very classic kind of, it's almost like a Russian Imperial Stout, this one, to be honest with you. I think it's fair to say that the hazelnuts are a lot more of a subtlety in this one than in the flavour than they are in the aroma. And it's quite interesting how this beer can be so different. So what you're going to get straight away with this one, you can feel that nice roasty black malty quality just blanketing the middle of your tongue. I do wonder if it is one of the carafa malts that's in here, because it does have a bit of that really well-fired bread crusty quality, and like I say, that forms the backbone of the beer. So the middle third of your palate has that really roasty black malty kind of thing, and as you go towards the back third of your tongue, it's definitely more, it definitely has a bit more of a kind of crusty quality to it. And yeah, I will say that the more you kind of drink of this, the slightly sweeter it gets as well, which is quite nice. But yeah, the roasty backbone of this beer, I think, really gives it a nice edge. Actually, I really like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, you go towards onto the very back third of your palate, you can feel the really roasty, well-fired black malty notes in this beer. But as you move further forward from that, you do get a little bit of that kind of brown bready quality. You can feel that on top of the black malt, on top of the well-fired bread crust, there is a little bit of a more almost rye breadish quality to this one, which is quite nice. There is a wee bit of a brown bready note, and if you go into the back third of your palate, there's a really roasty, toasty quality to this beer. Those really well-fired black grains come out of the beer quite nicely. So yeah, the flavour of that beer is pretty damn nice. The more I drink of it, the more roasty and toasty it gets at the back, but it really smoothens out a little bit the further forward that you go. But you can feel on that back third of your palate, the kind of brown bready notes are just a little bit thicker. And as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, you can feel it just gets a little bit, the breadiness just kind of thins down a little bit. Then as you move further forward, the kind of breadiness, the brown bready qualities, I think, kind of come out a little bit more in the beer. Just feels a little bit smoother. So on top of that brown bready note, yeah, in the middle third of your palate, talking about there now, so on top of the brown bready note, you do get a little bit of a chocolatey kind of base to the beer, and I would say it's about, yeah, about a 50% cocoa-ish note to this one. There are a few elements of milky chocolate, but there is an element of a slightly darker, higher cocoa chocolate in there as well. But yeah, on top of that chocolatey note, you do get a little bit of a nice kind of brown sugar, a sweet caramelly note to it. And as you move further out from that centre of the palate, you will get a wee bit more of a kind of biscuity, kind of grainy thing to this one. And I do like how that goes together. So if you go to the front corners of the palate, then move kind of diagonally back underneath, you do get some woody kind of flavours to the beer. And I think that's where the hazelnut is really kind of sitting in this beer. But I have to say, in the flavour, the hazelnut for me really takes a bit of a back seat compared to how it does in the aroma. And that's kind of what's interesting about this beer. If I was blind tasting this, you know, if I was blind tasting this, I would probably think this was a Russian Imperial Stout, an RIS, just because of that big kind of bitterness that it has. I wouldn't have thought that hazelnuts were supposed to be a focal point of this. I really think the hazelnuts just take a bit of a back seat in this beer, and you know, there's nothing, you know, I don't know how do we put this. It's not there's nothing wrong with this beer. This is a really damn solid kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout. It's really nice in that sense. But yeah, if it's marketed as a kind of hazelnut Imperial Stout, you would just expect the hazelnuts to be just a wee touch more prominent, to be honest with you. That's what I would say. But you know, it's a top quality Imperial Stout, I think, and it's old school. I really like this. But I just would expect the hazelnuts to just be a little touch more prominent, to be honest. That's all. And I mean, in fairness, when the liquid is on your tongue, because what you find with this beer is it makes quite a big transition. It is quite sweet early on, then the middle of your palate really dries out, and that's when you get all the other kind of things coming out in this one. When it's still in its kind of wet phase, if you like, you do get a good little bit of the hazelnutty qualities out of it. But when you go into the aftertaste, it just feels a lot more subtle. I mean, in fairness, on the front half of that middle third of your tongue, you do get a few of the kind of hazelnutty notes underneath. You do get an almost wee touch of like a slightly almost woody vanilla, oaky vanilla type thing coming out of this one. So you will find that just kind of sitting there on the front half of that middle third of your tongue, which is quite interesting. So yeah, that is quite a quirky one, I have to say. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a good little bit of earthiness. You do have a good little bit of earthiness sitting there, but as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, the earthiness, it does spread forward a little bit. You get a wee touch of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate, then round the front curve of the tongue, it's just a little bit lighter and grassy, but you can really feel some of that roasty, bread crusty, black malty kind of thing. It spreads forward into that front third of your tongue as well, which is quite interesting. That's normally where the area that would be reserved for the kind of fruity, the fruity juicy characters out of the beer. So yeah, let's look at that fruity side of things now. So yeah, like I said to you, one of the things you have to think about this beer is it really does have quite a stark transition actually. When you take this beer in, it's big and oily and actually quite sweet, but this one really makes a kind of sharp transition to being really dry and bitter the further that you go into the aftertaste. So when you take the beer in initially, you get a lot of kind of blackcurrant and blackberry notes out of this one, quite wet, slightly slick and juicy, I have to say. But then yeah, as you move further into the aftertaste, it develops more of a kind of figgy type note, and there's maybe a wee touch of a kind of wetter, plummy and sharper plummy note in this. So yeah, if you're on that front third of your palate, that's where that nice oily bubble comes out where the fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So if you go towards the back of that, you will get a slightly sharp, juicy, kind of plummy, almost, I don't know if cherry's the right word for it, but there's a slight sharpness to it. But as you move further forward along that front third of your tongue, it becomes a little bit more juicy and figgy. And then on the front third of your palate, on the front half of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit more of an oily character, and it's blackcurrant and blackberry notes that are coming out of this one. I would be really curious to know what hop has been used in this one. You know, the candidates for me would be the Williamette or the Eureka, which are American hops. Magnum is sometimes used, and I think Summit in some cases is used as a hop for imperial stouts like this. But those are the ones that are going to give you that kind of fruity character. From Europe, there's obviously the Bramling's Cross, which is quite popular in English barley wines and old ales and stuff like this. And then from Germany, you've got the Northern Brewer, which is very popular in Doppelbock and things. Those would also be candidates, but I've got a feeling that this one is probably. It could even have a little bit of Cascade, and Cascade can do some really interesting things in beers like this. And the kind of fruit profile this one does is a bit reminiscent of some black IPAs that I've had, where Cascade has been used. So yeah, there's a few possibilities for the hops in this one. But like I say, when you take the beer in, it is quite juicy and blackberry, blackcurranty leaning. Then when the beer gradually makes the transition to a more kind of dry roasty kind of profile, it starts to lean a little bit more towards the kind of sharper plummy, and then a slightly juicier kind of figgy note as well. You do get a little bit of that, but then you've got the big, slightly more oily blackcurrants and blackberries coming out of this beer, and they kind of linger there into the aftertaste. So yeah, I have to say this beer is quite an interesting one, mainly because of the transition that it makes. But it's another very, very solid beer from In Brewing. I would describe this one, pardon me, as quite a kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout. That's what I would think if I was blind tasting this one. But yeah, another really interesting beer from these guys, and I'm not surprised. You know, they do have a good pedigree when it comes to brewing these beers. So yeah, let's talk about the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer I would say is kind of bottom end of full bodied. It's not the thickest of Imperial Stouts that you're going to come across, but it's 9.8%. Some of the ones we're getting these days are like 13-14%. These big pastry stouts, which are, you know, big oily kind of creamy things. But yeah, this is more of an old school Imperial Stout in my mind. But yeah, I would describe this one as bottom end of mid bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth. It has a degree of oiliness to it, this one, in terms of the mouthfeel, but it's also a little bit slick. As I say, it does have a little bit of that kind of cleanliness to it as well that you expect of Scandinavian beer, just because of the purity of the water in my mind. So it does feel quite slick, but at the same time quite clean. In terms of bitterness and stuff, I think we're talking at least 80 IBUs with this beer, both from the malty side of things and a little bit from the hoppy side as well. But yeah, I do like how that side of the beer goes together. So about an 80 IBU beer, this one, both a malty bitterness and a hoppy bitterness to this one. So some nice, yeah, there's a nice kind of smooth malty character to this one as well, and there's a wee touch of sweetness. You do get a bit of a brown sugary note to this one in the middle of your palate. But it's quite a toasty brown sugar, I would say, but a wee bit of a sweetness to it as well. But yeah, a little bit of sweetness, but mainly a big roasty kind of malt base, and that develops as you go further into the aftertaste with this one. But on the fruity side of things, as I said, comes in and it's quite juicy and sharp, but then as you go further into the aftertaste, it does get a little bit drier, and then it leans more towards that blackcurranty, blackberry side of things. So for me, this is one of these beers where the flavour really opens up as you give it a little bit of time on the palate. This is quite an interesting one from an analysis perspective. But for me, this is a properly old, kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout. That's what I would probably predict of this one if I was blind tasting it. So yeah, thumbs up to In Brewing for this one. It's nice to have something like this, because there's a lot of sweet pastry stouts out there these days. So to have something a little bit more old school is a little bit of a kind of change of pace, if you like. So that's always welcome here on the channel. I always like having beers that make me think a little bit, and this one certainly has done that. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Hustle, a 9.8% hazelnut Imperial Stout. The hazelnut is a little bit more of a subtlety in this one. It comes out really nicely in the aroma, but more of a subtlety in the flavour for me. But yeah, I've enjoyed reviewing this one, so I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on it as well. We'll leave it at that. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from All In Brewing as well. We will return to these guys at some point fairly soon, I'm sure, but in the meantime I hope you've enjoyed this one. Check out my social media, check out some more beers from All In Brewing, and I will catch you guys on the next review. Slàinte, skål, cheers. This one was the Hustle, 9.8% ABV, Hazelnut Imperial Stout, All In Brewing from Gothenburg on the west coast of Sweden. Cheers, skål.